Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Brian Thatcher, and welcome to Mercy Unbound. It's a show that aims to provide hope, an avenue for healing, and one that will help you understand and then live the great mercy of God. With me today, I have a special guest. Maria Gallagher is an advocate for pregnant women, their babies, people with disabilities, and the frail elderly. And as you know, that's part of our mission statement as Eucharistic Apostles. She's also co-host of the Positively Pro-Life podcast. And today we're going to discuss her book, Mercy's Power, Inspiration to Serve the Gospel of Life. It's available at shopmercy.org and amazon.com. And I would encourage viewers also to go back to listen to some of my earlier podcasts at drbrianthatcher.com and look at show 97, where I discuss the similarities and arguments between abortion and slavery. It's a kind of an interesting comparison. The same arguments they use today, they used to promote slavery over 100 years ago. And as well as show number 77, you can watch John Brukowski and his conversion. He was a former powerful abortionist and a dear friend of mine. Maria, so welcome to Mercy Unbound. It's great to see you today.
It's great to be with you today.
In the introduction, you quote St. Faustina from her diary entry 303. Great love can change small things into great ones, and it's only love which lends value to our actions. That kind of summarizes the whole gospel, doesn't it?
It really does. And you can find so much good in the words of St. Faustina that are applicable to us today in the pro-life movement. And the reason that I wrote this book, there were actually a couple of different reasons. One was that I had written a book called Joyful Encounters with Mary, which was a roller coaster ride through the Rosary. And I was on a podcast with my editor, Chris Sparks. And when we were off air, we were talking, and he said that they hadn't published a pro-life title in a while at Marian Press. And that got my gears going. And I thought to myself, maybe this is an answer to a prayer that I've had in my heart for many years. And that was to write a book dedicated to pro-life. I had been a journalist by training, and the big skill that I had was writing. And I felt that there was a lot that I could communicate to people about the pro-life movement, about getting involved, about staying informed and staying motivated. And I wanted to bring all that to light under the concept of mercy, because so often when we look at the pro-life movement, we think about justice for the preborn, justice for pregnant women, and that's good. And we should rightly fight for justice. But I think at the same time, we have to be tempered by mercy. And I think that, in fact, the pro-life movement is a pro-mercy movement. And that was something I wanted to share with the world.
You wrote in the book, and it seems so right on, bullseye. You said, it seems the voices against the protection of life have grown louder and have been accompanied by attacks against churches, pregnancy resource centers, and various faith-based institutions. I even remember a few years ago, there was a person testifying before Congress to be appointed for a judge, and Senator Kamala Harris attacked him as being part of some dangerous religious cult. He was Catholic, and he was a member of the Knights of Columbus. And I'm thinking, we are really getting attacked. And I think of Martin Luther King, the truth will set you free. And that's really what you're trying to do in this book, aren't you?
Yeah, I think that at the basis of the pro-life movement is the concept of truth. We are proclaiming the truth about the dignity and value of all human life from the moment of conception to the moment of natural death. And the forces against us are spreading lies. I mean, they talk about the unborn child being a blob of tissue. Now, that's not true. They talk about women dying from giving birth, and whereas that can happen, it's in the minority of cases. And in the vast majority of cases, it is abortion that's threatening the health and safety of women rather than childbirth. And they talk about abortion being a simple and easy procedure. It's anything but that, because the ramifications of abortion can stay with a woman for many, many years. I know in our office, we had a case one time where a woman called us who was in her 80s, and she was crying about the abortion she had had decades earlier. She was still dealing with that grief of losing that precious child to abortion. So, abortion is not the quick fix that the other side would have you believe. That's a lie. And abortion harms women. It definitely harms children. It ends their lives. And it harms men too, because oftentimes men are involved in the decision to abort and they carry that guilt around with them. So I think that in my book, Mercy's Power, what I want to try to do is to shine a spotlight on the truth behind the abortion industry and to show how we, as ambassadors of love, can really combat the lies of the enemy, and to show that abortion is not the solution to a woman's problems. It only creates more problems for her.
Years ago, I wrote a little booklet called Rachel, Weep No More with Frank Pavone. And there are so many, you said, complications, the emotional, spiritual, psychological, even medical complications. Um, I had a relative who had an abortion when I was an undergraduate at Toledo many, many, many years ago. And my sister called me and was just distraught to no end that her daughter was going to go ahead and have an abortion. And I said, it's no big deal, you know. And she did. And that couple, the man and her broke off. And then she found another good man. They got married. And she got pregnant. And after about the fourth or fifth month, the baby was spontaneously born and died in her arms. And that happened 4 times. And it was only years later, after reading all the potential complications, I realized that an incompetent cervix is one of the complications. She eventually delivered one baby girl who's doing very well and actually married now. But that hit me 30, 35 years later like a dagger in the heart, that there are complications. And to think it's some procedure done on Monday and forgotten on Tuesday certainly isn't the case. And I'm sure you've seen women who just, like you said, carry this pain in the men too.
Yes, I have. And in fact, I knew of a woman who aborted the only child she would ever have. And she named that child Kelly, Kelly being a boy's name in that case, because she felt as if she had lost a boy. And she carried that grief with her for many, many years. And it's true that through Christ's healing and through his forgiveness, women can receive the hope and the help that they need, but you don't have to go through that to begin with. There are alternatives to abortion. Now, the other side wants to wipe out the alternatives. They want to wipe out pregnancy centers. They defunded them, for instance, in Pennsylvania. And these centers provide everything from diapers to daycare referrals and from mentoring to maternity clothes for pregnant women facing challenging circumstances. And they provide that help even after the baby is born. And you may think as an observer, well, that's not much help, or that won't go a long way. In fact, those pregnancy centers save lives each and every day. And I know of a woman recently, she had an abortion appointment. She went to a pregnancy center. She had an ultrasound and she got a surprise because she was not just pregnant with one baby, she was pregnant with 2 babies. And thankfully, she canceled that abortion appointment. She went through with her pregnancy and she is now the mother of thriving twins. That's the difference that a pregnancy center can make in the life of a pregnant woman. That's the difference that we as individuals can make in the life of a pregnant woman. I mean, there were obviously 2 lives that were saved as a result of that intervention, but perhaps even a third, because we don't know what would have happened to that woman if she had had the abortion. So it's very important that people realize that they have the power to save lives and to change lives for the better. And each of us, in a small way, can do that within our families, within our communities, within our states, and eventually within our country. And those little actions have broad repercussions for the good. They have implications which will be seen for generation to generation. Because we know that when you abort a child, you're not just aborting that one child, you are cutting off an entire branch of a family tree. So there are all those children that would have come from that child and from the children subsequent to that child. So we want to save people from that heartache, that pain. We know from research that the worst pain psychologically that a woman can experience is the loss of a child. And we are condemning women to that pain each and every day by pressuring them to abort their children. And we know for a fact from research that many of the women who walk into abortion facilities are being pressured to do so by a boyfriend, husband, parent, grandparent. They're having abortions that they don't want.
A couple of years ago, I interviewed a lady who was on the abortion table, and she described the room. It was so sterile, just silver and metal trays, and nobody's friendly, and it's not a happy time. And she heard a voice while she's getting ready uh, to go ahead with the procedure, and she heard, "Get off that table." And she ended up getting off the table, delivered her son, and gave it up for adoption. And years later, reconnected with the son. He's doing very well. It's a beautiful interview, but people don't even think about adoption. There's so many people that can have babies and want children, and share us any experiences you might have in that regard.
Oh, I have so many beautiful adoption stories within my own family. I had an aunt who was unable to carry a pregnancy to term. And so she and her husband, my uncle, adopted 2 little boys when they were very small. And growing up, I had the privilege and honor of being cousins to these boys. And they were a tremendous blessing in our family. And I can't imagine life without them. And when I think about them, I don't think about the fact that they were adopted. I just think about the fact that they're my cousins. And I have a love for my cousins. I'm doing a series of articles for the Marians on adoption. And there's a beautiful story about this one boy. He was born blind. His mother was addicted to drugs. He was put into the foster care system. His biological aunt found him and adopted him. And when that boy was 4 years old, somebody handed him a microphone, and it was like his life was forever changed. He has a beautiful voice, and now he's grown, and he goes around the country singing and making speeches and connecting with people and showing the beauty of adoption. And I know of another woman, she was a birth mother, and she was being pressured to abort by the father of the child. And she had seen a sign outside a church that said that if you were pregnant, you could get help there. So she went to the church. Unfortunately, the doors were locked, but she found a chapel nearby where people were praying. She went into the chapel, and she found that those very people were praying for unborn children. And she saw that as a sign from above. One of the people there helped to connect her with a pregnancy center, and she was able to give birth and to place her child for adoption. And it's just a wonderful story about the power of love and the power of new beginnings and the power of hope. And that's what's available through adoption. And anymore, many adoptions are open adoptions. So the birth mother can have some kind of contact with her child as the child grows. And the adoptive couple would be very open to that. And they provide updates about the child. And the birth mother may even take part in family celebrations with the child. And so a lot of things have changed since the years when adoptions were uniformly closed and there was no communication between the birth mother and the child and the adoptive parents. And so we see where this beautiful adoption triad can provide love and support to this child growing up. And when we choose abortion, we're cutting off that love to that child, and we're cutting off the love of God to ourselves. And that's why adoption is so preferable to abortion.
I was thinking of a question you hear sometimes, well, it's not really human. And another one is, oh, it's not really alive. And I'm thinking to myself as a doctor, I've never seen anything grow that's not living.
Uh-huh.
It's not human. What is it? But before I get into the next question on men, would people say they're contemplating, they need help, they're scared to death, and they need centers? Would they find that on Google, or how do you connect with people? How do they?
Sure. We connect with people in a number of ways. In Pennsylvania, we have a toll-free hotline, 188 Life Aid. That's 188 LIFEAID, that people can call and be connected with the pregnancy center that's closest to them. On the internet, there's Option Line, which provides a connection for pregnant women who are facing challenging circumstances. You can just Google pro-life and you will find many, many organizations that can reach out in love and support to pregnant women who face challenges. And so there is help available for every pregnant woman. We serve a loving God, and He's a compassionate God, and He is a God of providence. And so He does provide for the baby. And it takes trust in order to recognize the fact that God will come through for that mother and for that baby. But it's up to each one of us to be the tools within the hands of God to make those miracles happen.
Right, right. When we talk about men, they're like on the whole spectrum of pushing a scared woman into getting an abortion, or if they want to keep the child, they have no really say in it.
Mhm.
They can't go to court and have the woman not have an abortion, so they have no say. But a dear friend of mine called me one day and told me this story, and I was just shocked. He thought he was the only child for years. He's a devout Catholic, um, but his mother had recently told him that she had aborted his brother, and he
Oh,
was devastated.
yes.
He was it really got him. He was hurting, and you know, I I'm I never had this brother, and so
Mhm.
again, it's not just a procedure that you do on Monday and forget on Tuesday.
No, it's not. And it does affect men profoundly. We know that. There's a website called silentnomoreawareness.org where men share their testimonies about having been involved in an abortion decision or having one thrust upon them. And those testimonies are so heart-wrenching because you have the full spectrum of men. Some were pushing very hard for the abortion and then came to regret that decision. Others were fighting till the very last minute for the life of that child, as the protector of that child, as the father of that child. And I'll never forget being outside an abortion facility and praying with a group of people. And there was a man who came along, and he had such pain in his eyes. And he told me that he had been hurt by abortion. And that look that he had in his eyes, I will never forget. And when we are fighting for life, we're fighting for the entire family. We're fighting not just for that child, but for the mother and for the father as well. And you do see these miraculous reunions where perhaps in the beginning the father was not so supportive, but when the mother chooses life for her child, the father comes around and the father steps up to his responsibility, and they become a cohesive family unit. And it's just wonderful to see. But if you abort the child, chances are that relationship will fall apart, because the two people may blame each other for the abortion. They have unresolved guilt. They carry a lot of shame and pain. And so it's very difficult for them after the trauma of abortion, because abortion is a tragedy and it is a traumatic experience for all of those involved.
I've never read a study on this. I don't know if anyone has done this, but I've always wondered, if you look at today, where we're at with violence, with the gun violence, with the gang violence, with the drug use, and with all the deterioration of the society and disrespect for life. I wonder how much of that's related to the original Roe v. Wade decision, and you're just discarding this little preborn human being as if it's a piece of tissue and a disregard for life. And then it extends all the way to the other side of euthanasia. You had an experience, I believe, in high school, didn't you, with a teacher that compared those two, or can you share with us?
Yes, it was in junior high, and I had a teacher who was also our school principal, and she was a lovely woman named Dr. Mary Kay Clark, and she actually became involved in Seton Home School after she left our school. But in any case, she was a very foresighted teacher, and I remember her drawing on the blackboard two words, abortion and euthanasia, and a line between the two, because she says abortion leads to euthanasia. And we find that to be the case because with the disrespect for life that comes with abortion, we have also found an upsurge in euthanasia, which is the killing of an elderly person or a person who is ill, so-called mercy killing, but there's nothing merciful about it. And we see where a huge movement has opened up, the assisted suicide movement. And assisted suicide is where a doctor gives a lethal dose of drugs to a patient to kill that patient. It is morally reprehensible. It is a corruption of the medical profession. And it coarsens our culture across the board. And I heard it said often by an advocate for life that I used to work with, that she said that if we cannot accept the life of the baby in the womb, how are we going to accept the life of the person who is struggling, the elderly person, the person with a disability? If we can't even see the humanity of that unborn child, our eyes will be blinded to the humanity of that elderly person, that person with the disability. And so we do see where abortion leads to euthanasia. They are both grave offenses against human life. And so that's why the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation that I work for, which is an affiliate of National Right to Life, deals with the issues of abortion, infanticide, euthanasia, and assisted suicide, because we feel that those are the four core issues of the pro-life movement. There are so many other issues which impact life, which are very important, but we feel that those issues lie at the heart of the pro-life mission. And if we can eliminate abortion, eliminate euthanasia, eliminate assisted suicide, eliminate infanticide, we will have a culture that truly cherishes life from the dawn of life to the twilight of life. And that's what we're working toward.
Years ago, I gave a talk at a healthcare conference on life and had studied Dr. Jerome Lejeune, who was the one who, as you know, discovered the extra chromosome, trisomy 21, that leads to Down syndrome. And he was very, very much afraid that his discovery would lead exactly to abortion. So I was preparing for this talk, and I read in an article, I believe it was in Belgium, that the top doctor for the country had said, we have found a cure for Down syndrome. And I'm thinking, found a cure? So I'm reading the article, and their cure was aborting every fetus that had that extra chromosome. So that was their cure, was to eliminate. And I'm thinking, is that how we're going to cure heart disease and cardiovascular disease and cancer? This is just terrible use of words and distortions and lies.
Yes, I know that in Iceland, for instance, they said that they had eradicated Down syndrome, and that was through abortion. Well, that's not an antidote to
Right.
Down syndrome. And the thing is that what a lot of people don't realize is that there's actually a waiting list of people to adopt children with Down syndrome. They are precious human beings. They are so sweet. They have so much power and potential in their lives. I know of a young woman with Down syndrome named Chloe, and she's now a young adult. But when she was a child, she had the most fantastic experiences. She spoke at the United Nations. She met presidents, she met vice presidents, she met musical stars. How many of us have had experiences like that? It was astounding. And she is a wonderful dancer and basketball player, and she's just the sweetest girl. And her mother often tells me, why should I have to defend the right of my child to live? Why should I have to do that? And when she was pregnant with Chloe, the doctor recommended abortion. And she and her husband is a former police officer, said, there's no way we are aborting this child. And as a result of their advocacy, Chloe's family, we actually have a law in Pennsylvania called Chloe's Law. And it ensures that a parent who receives a prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome receives educational resources and support when their child is born. So a lot of the myths surrounding Down syndrome can be alleviated through education. And once people are educated about the potential of these young lives, they are far less likely to abort. But the abortion rate remains very high for those children who are diagnosed with Down syndrome. It has been estimated that the vast majority of children who receive that prenatal diagnosis are killed in the womb. And that's something we need to address as a nation.
It's difficult to address because as we get farther away from God, we get farther away from the antidote and the one who's going to help us through all this. Share with us your thoughts on the Blessed Mother and her pro-life position and why we should emulate her.
Well, I wouldn't be in the pro-life movement were it not for the Blessed Mother. I was a very hardened journalist, and I had even in my mind taken the position that if I ever ran for office for the state legislature, I would say, well, I pray for an end to abortion every day, but I'm pro-choice. Now, the Blessed Mother showed me the fallacy of that position, that in fact, if you are saying that it should be legal to abort a child, you are not pro-choice, you are in fact pro-abortion. And through her intervention, I became awakened to the pro-life movement, and I started praying the rosary in a rosary procession to Planned Parenthood back in Ohio. And that led me to become involved in the pro-life club at my church, which ultimately led me to Ohio Right to Life and to the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation, and to writing articles for National Right to Life. So it's been a tremendous journey, and it has been fueled by my devotion to the Blessed Mother. The Blessed Mother is a protector of preborn children and their mothers. She understands what it is like to face an unexpected pregnancy. She did in her own life. And she is a bridge to God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And when we invoke Mary's help, miracles do happen. She is a patron saint of the pro-life movement, and with good reason. And I think that she's instrumental in the success of the pro-life movement. I don't think we would have seen the overturn of Roe versus Wade had it not been for the Blessed Mother.
Our ministry, Eucharistic Apostles of Divine Mercy, is under the patronage of Our Lady of Guadalupe. That's a pro-life message too, isn't it? Our Lady.
It is, because Our Lady of Guadalupe helped to stop infanticide. And she's a wonderful patroness, and she's the perfect patroness, really, for the pro-life movement, because she shows her dedication to her children, and we are all children under her mantle. And when we recognize that, there's no limit to what we can do as advocates for life, working hand in hand with Mary. And I think often that is overlooked, and sometimes people have difficulty with their relationship with Mary, maybe because of problems in their relationship with their own mothers. Maybe they didn't even know their mother. But the fact of the matter is that Mary is the perfect mother, and she can make up for all those years of pain that you might have experienced in your relationship with your own mother. And she will never abandon us. She's with us until the very end. That's why we invoke her in the Hail Mary. She's not a goddess, she's not a deity, but she is somebody that we revere, and someone whom we honor, and someone who can produce tremendous blessings, and it can be a conduit for many graces for the pro-life movement.
You know, Maria, we just had a hurricane come through, and fortunately we were spared, but not everybody was. And I was just getting tired of watching the news minute after minute and thinking, you know, there were people really suffering. And I decided to go to YouTube and just pull up Our Lady of Fatima movie. And I found one, it was 1952. And
Uh-huh.
my sister and I, she stayed with us, she lives alone. We watched that movie, and you know, it brought tears to my eyes. But in Fatima, she was saying, "Pray, pray, pray," and pray just isn't about abortion, but just a reminder to people who are caught in this situation to pray and ask God and Our Lady for help. Um, the power of prayer is significant, isn't it? Have you found that?
Yes, the pro-life movement is made up of people of many faiths and even no faith at all, who are dedicated to the proposition that all human life is sacred. And yet we are a movement that is powered by prayer. And I have seen so many times when doors have opened up as a result of prayers that were said. Looking at the other end of life, I know with my own mother, she faced a courageous battle with bladder cancer, and she got to the point where she was just emaciated. And I remember her being in the skilled nursing facility, and a woman saying, I've never seen anybody that thin.
Mm.
And yet my mother powered through, and she gave it her all when she had to do her daily exercises. And she took what little strength she had, and she fought to the very end because she was so dedicated to my sister and to me and to my daughter, her granddaughter. And she showed me what it means to fight for life. And that's an image that stays with me even now. And I will fight to the very end for life in honor of my mother, who gave me life and gave my sister life.
You know, we as Catholics have another piece of armor in our armamentarium, the Blessed Sacrament, the Eucharist. Father John Harden, you mentioned in your book. Father Harden, I was happy to see his name, because years ago I met with him several times when starting our ministry, and very holy priest, servant of God now. But he said there's no stopping abortion without the Eucharist. And doesn't that just kind of all tie in? It trust in God, stay close to God. Even if you've made a mistake, God loves us.
He does. And I will never forget listening to a cassette tape of Father Harden saying in that very stirring voice, there is no stopping abortion without the Eucharist. It is cemented in my mind. And that's why I'm a real devotee of adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. I go every week. And it's a powerful time with Jesus in the Sacred Host. And it's a special time of renewal and refreshment. And I also try to receive the Eucharist as often as I can, to carry Jesus with me through my work in the pro-life movement. And even when we cannot physically get to Holy Communion, we can do a spiritual communion and let Jesus in. And even when we can't get to an adoration chapel, maybe we don't have one near us, you can go to the EWTN website and they have a live stream from their adoration chapel. And you can have that precious moment with Jesus in the Sacred Host through your phone, through your tablet, through your laptop. And I noticed that when I was in a pro-life group at my local parish, when we established that weekly adoration for life, there were miracles on the sidewalks in front of abortion centers the weekend after that. We saw people change their minds. We saw hearts change and minds change, and we saw lives saved as a result of the time we spent before the Blessed Sacrament. And we know that Christ is really the answer to all of our difficulties, all of our problems. And that when we unite with him in Holy Communion, it's just a powerful force. We have a saying in the Curcio movement that I'm also a member of, that Christ and I are an overwhelming majority. And that's true.
That's wonderful. That's beautiful. Well, we've been discussing points out of Maria Gallagher's book, Mercy's Power, Inspiration to Serve the Gospel of Life, available at shopmercy.org, the Marian's website, and also at Amazon. Maria, any points you want to wrap up today's show with that come to your mind?
Yes, I would like to say that in the book, I provide some action steps for people. And the first action step is to do a self-assessment. Every one of us has been blessed with gifts and talents, which we can use and share with the pro-life movement. The question is to identify your gifts and skills and talents. What motivates you? What are you good at? And use that to bless others. I know people, for instance, who are very good at artwork. And so they make icons and they raffle these icons off, and they may donate the proceeds to a local pregnancy center. I know people who are gifted writers who write articles to inform people about pro-life, or they may write letters to the editor of their local newspapers. I know people who like to crochet, and so they may crochet little caps for newborns in the NICU. It doesn't matter what your talent is, the pro-life movement can use it, and we can use your help. Everyone is called to affirm life, to protect life, and to champion life, and we need your help.
You know, Maria, we're called to be the light of the world. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can, as Martin Luther King said, and you're being a light of the world. Just keep up the great work. People, I hope you enjoyed this show of Mercy Unbound. Please share it with your friends, pass it along. And Maria, we hope to have you back soon with another book of pro-life or whatever you decide to write on. I just enjoyed chatting with you today, and thank you again for joining me for Mercy Unbound.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel for the video portion. The podcast can be heard at anchor.fm/drbryan, B-R-Y-A-N Thatcher, T-H-A-T-C-H-E-R, and on all the major podcast forums. I would love to speak at your church or conference, and please consider supporting our efforts to spread the truth to a hurting world. Thank you again. And for more information, go to the website at drbryanthatcher.com.